In a day and age where a regular old carton of eggs is $7 and people are buying chickens to have their own personal cage-free farms and in preparation for the apocalypse, I can't help but wonder, which came first, gay son or thought daughter? Well, we're going to find out all that and more in today's episode of the Reality Podcast. I'm your host, Layla. Welcome. Let's just jump right in. I'm missing a host today, but that's okay. We're gonna get it back in blood in due time, and it's gonna be like she never left. So let's just begin. Today we are talking about thought daughter. As a thought daughter, I figured this is only appropriate. We're gonna be talking about the nuance behind what it means to be a thought daughter, the whole gay son thought daughter trope that took place way back in the day. First thing that comes to mind, Vine. If you don't know what the gay son thought daughter question is, and you're kind of like, huh? Let me give you a little bit of history. Let me put this relic known as Vine. At least I'm pretty sure that's where it originated. Either Vine or Twitter, but sometime in like 2016, 17, 18. Those years all kind of feel like a blur and interlap together. But the question, gay son thought daughter, arose. And while they're both supposed to be derogatory, it's a setup question because God forbid you have a gay son or a thought daughter. So it sparked a lot of questions with people. It was an ongoing joke for much longer than it needed to be, but at that time of the internet, things were so fast paced. So memes really lasted a really long time, like maybe longer than they should have sometimes, but I digress. So I want to start with the gay son um, aspect, not really about gay son, but just about masculinity. So I'm sure we're all familiar with the red pill talk and the hyper masculine alpha male who thinks that 2-in-1 deodorant and shaving cream is enough to last him for 12 consecutive months, and he only eats red meat because only betas eat chicken. So, why would he do that? But I just want to explore, why are men that way, even on a smaller scale of why men are taught to be these alpha males in this patriarchal society that already praises them. They feel the need to further extend that masculinity to let you know so that you never forget they are a man in America. With the sassy man apocalypse and the reclamation of daughters, I feel like I'm pushing uncharted waters here. So I just want to explore, expand my horizon. You know, I've never personally loved the sassy man apocalypse. It was funny for a little bit, but people just started getting a little too comfortable. And with the sassy man apocalypse, it really easily found its way into homophobic lands because suddenly everything that men did was sassy. And I'm not gonna lie, some of it was sassy, but sassy, gay. I don't know why those two things are interlapping. What made it funny was that it was like straight men doing sassy things or things that are typically associated with femininity or female attributes or whatever. I could talk about that too, but it had a feminine connotation, I'll say. And I don't really know why, because it was literally just men being smart in the mouth and talking back. Two things they should never do. Cutting in here to say that I think the Sassy Man Apocalypse may have also been an aggressive resurgence. No, what's a good word? An aggressive rebellion to typical masculine norms and standards. It was like men's way of fighting back after, I guess, getting sick and tired of hearing women critique their masculinity while suppressing their feminine side. So it was kind of like their way of being like, well, if she's gonna do it, I'm gonna do it too. And I think it does come a little bit from envy of women being able to express themselves regardless of the emotion, and men don't, they're not afforded that same luxury. So I think they were kind of, all that built up anger kind of just jumped out of nowhere, and all these emotions that they had no labels for or understanding of kind of just popped out onto the scene with this rise of the sudden influx of emotions that they were having, that they characterize as feminine because, emotions are personified in a feminine light. They made the mistake of trying to mimic women behavior instead of just being themselves and feeling their normal human emotions. So because of the dangerous rhetoric revolving emotions being related to femininity, like solely femininity, they did what they only knew how to do, which was to mimic instead of actually learning their emotions. They just decided to leech on to what the closest association of emotion was, which 9 times out of 10 in a man's life is a woman. And thus the sassy man apocalypse was born. There was just a sudden rise of this in our timelines. There was that one guy, I don't know his name, but he ended up on the news just for being sassy. Haven't seen him since. I will say the sassy man apocalypse does seem to have died down a little bit, but I just want to talk about why men are expected to show up a certain way in society and how harmful that can really be. So, I can't talk about masculinity without talking about bell hooks. Like, come on. So, I just want to talk about what Miss Bell Hooks had to say about, men and how they're expected to show up with these unrealistic norms that they've placed on themselves. But neither here nor there. Got All About Love by Bell Hooks. As you can see, I love this book. Anyways, she makes a lot of room for all types of forms of love in this book, and she discovers what that means on a masculine side, on a feminine side, as a family, as an individual. All around great read. Definitely recommend. Um, so I just want to pull out this page where she talks about men and their role in the patriarchy and how it's associated with power and comes from a lack of love, really. So, John Stoltenberg's book, The End of Manhood, a book for men of conscience, analyzes the extent to which masculine identity offered men as the ideal in a patriarchal culture is one that requires all males to invent and invest in a false self. From the moment little boys are taught they should not cry or express hurt, feelings of loneliness or pain, that they must be tough, they are learning how to mask true feelings. In worst case scenarios, they're learning how to not feel anything ever. These lessons are usually taught to males by other males and sexist mothers, even boys raised in the progressive, loving households where parents encourage them to express their emotions, learn a different understanding about masculinity and feelings on the playground, in the classroom, playing sports, or watching television. They may end up choosing patriarchal masculinity to be accepted by other boys and affirmed by male authority figures. So, as we can see, personally, I never believed that whole bias of biology um, business about how men are just more amped up and um, toxic because of their boosting testosterone levels. Like, that's just never made any sense to me. Secondly, we can see how it's clearly stated that it is due to our conditioning, specifically men's conditioning, that leads them to be these aggressive, misogynistic, um, toxic alpha males. So we need to let that go and stop pushing that down men's throats, because where does it leave us if men are constantly being taught to be hard and women are constantly taught to be soft? How do those things mesh? Um, but what I liked about that quote specifically was her in describing the fact that due to our society, even if you are raised in an upbringing that nourishes you and your emotional self, it's still a real possibility for you to become a over masculine, or really I'll say wounded masculine, because when I think of masculinity, it's not that. But this hard man with a that's really a shell of a person, because you spend so much time investing in this idea of what a man should be, out of what respect for other men, that it leads you to this cataclysmic event as you get older where you realize none of your actions or choices were really your own. So, was it worth it? Was it worth it when your homie said, as long as you're happy, and you said, damn, I'm a dropper? Was he rubbing your back at night? Like, that's what I don't get. Was it worth it for the validation of another man? So it really just goes to show how in a patriarchal society, it does not benefit men nor women. Because at the end of the day, it's coming from a place of deeply rooted fear and shame against feelings. Nothing that is inherently feminine or inherently masculine. We're human beings, we have emotion. So I don't see how any of us stand to gain from living in a society that restricts us from our true selves, our authenticity, and love. Nothing good is going to come of that. And it shows because men don't know who they are. They don't know how to address their feelings. They have no emotional intelligence and they weaponize it because they act like they don't know what's going on, but they do. They just don't want to address it. And instead, they let their feelings bottle up and it's expressed in rage. And for some reason, they don't think that rage is an emotion. It is. Anger is an emotion. What they don't know is that anger and aggression are not the same thing. Just because you're angry, that doesn't mean you have to be aggressive. That doesn't mean you have to get loud. That doesn't mean you have to be intimidating. But they confuse anger and aggression for a means of power because that's how they see it. If you're hard, you have power. Nothing can tear you down. That's not true. You know what's really hard? Glass. You know what happens when you drop glass? It breaks. It's fragile. It's solid, but it's fragile. And that's exactly where you guys' egos are. Hard and fragile. You're always on the defense. You're always on the offense too. Somebody doesn't have to say anything to you. You're just quick to rebuttal, quick to reply. And it reeks of insecurity. So I think, and not even to be annoying, but this is just from a third person perspective, outside looking in. I'm just peering over the window. Oh, it's so hard to say. But I guess we need to let men have their feelings. I guess we need to let men have their feelings. Like, I know like who set that system up, but clearly it ain't working. So we gotta let them have their feelings. I just think it needs to be expressed first and foremost in a healthy way. Like I said, anger is an emotion. It does not have to be met with aggression. Those two things don't mean the same thing. Just because your grandma died, that doesn't give you a right to treat me like shit. Those two things don't mean the same thing. They're not synonymous. I don't work like that. But it's just because of this emotional disconnect that they have spent so much time neglecting themselves and their inherent human feelings that they don't seem to know. They're just underdeveloped in that area. And this is a generalization. This is obviously not all men, okay? But I'm just saying, like, as a collective, y'all need to tighten up and get together. But I do see a nice, refreshing change of pace, I will say. And I'm so happy to see that. I am. So, yeah, I just wanted to tackle that. And I guess, what can we do about it? I don't really know because I'm not gonna lie, Google is free. Y'all need to go to therapy, y'all need to heal because don't expect a woman to do it for you. That's what I will say. Don't do that. Don't do that. I hate the idea that a woman's purpose in this life is to have children and to show men the way to their emotional self. No, it's not. Everybody's emotions are our own responsibility. It is your job to heal that wounded masculine through therapy, hoping, whatever you have to do, some shadow work, I don't know, but figure it out because it's not my job. Google is free. I ain't come and ask you to give me any type of tips and tricks on how to heal myself. I expect the same from you. Okay? Anyways, let's move on to the next part of the video now that we've tackled that. Thought daughter and what that means. So, there's been a lot of controversy that sparked after the reclamation of what it means to be a thought daughter, because it was initially a derogatory term, has been now seen as this glorified aesthetic of intellectualism in academia. But of course, it was met with its feedbacks and criticism, like any trend is, any aesthetic is. So I think when I first saw it, I was kind of like, is it that deep? But after reading this Substack article, my perspective kind of changed because it really pushed me back into remembrance as to where the thought daughter trend all really came from. Like, this is much deeper than just being a thought. This is much deeper. This goes into the segment of black people. Yeah, it had to be said. And I would not have been reminded of this if it wasn't for this Substack article. So let's get into it. In the Substack article under Soft Nonsense by KIHNINDEWA, KIHNINDEWA. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not, I'm deeply sorry. Um, but she wrote a Substack article in response to a white creator's article. Thought daughter has a race problem because she noticed while in the article that it was just lacking the touch of a black woman, because it's kind of hard to speak objectively about a race issue when you don't meet the criteria of the race that's receiving the prejudice. It just lacked the black woman's perspective. So that's basically what she was sharing in this in her article. But there was a specific point that stood out to me because essentially the author's original story of Thought Daughter Has a Race Problem was covering the fact that it's rooted in white elitism and an aesthetic that is very exclusionary to black people. So it's just kind of hard to talk about that when you're not black, though. And this author really shed the light as to why that is, because we have to remember where the Thought Daughter even came from. It was on Black Twitter, okay, for a reason. So, to quote, Thought Daughter itself is a play on Thought Daughter, a light-hearted reclamation of a sexually derogatory term originating from misogynoir and still primarily targeting black women. It wasn't that deep, life-changing, or saving, but I still admired the wittiness of the collective black girl response to something that was supposed to flatten us. I loved how we let it roll off our backs, how we took sovereignty over ourselves with the thought daughter. We manipulated an attempt to degrade and sexualize into a statement about the depths of our minds. And we made it silly, girly, and fun. Now, I don't know where the term thought daughter, like UGH, came from, but I do know thought daughter. Like, do y'all remember like that what it stands for? Like, it literally stands for that hoe over there. Like, did y'all forget? Because I forgot. But what I like about what this author is saying, to narrow it down, because she does kind of go into more detail about where the white woman comes into all of this and how she will substitute friendship as a means of openness instead of actually just listening to what you have to say. But for the sake of this video, we're going to focus on that specific paragraph. Um, so, yes, what I like about this is that it reminds us that the reclamation for the term thought daughter is going to hit a little bit deeper because we are black. Because I've seen a lot of controversy about the thought daughter and about how it's just kind of very passive approach to literature and academia, and it's just an aesthetic, this and that. And honestly, I don't really see the harm in that. I don't see the harm in a trend that's telling people to read. Like, what's so bad about that? I think that could be a really good thing. We do need to read. The brain rot of it all was getting a little too serious for my comfort. So I saw this trend as a good thing. And I thought of it as an extremely good thing when I remembered that this was first and foremost a way to degrade and over sexualize black women again. Because if we're being serious, in this country, the history with black women has been nothing but degrading and dehumanizing, whether that be for medical reasons or sexual reasons, or as just a means of an achievement. Now, I didn't forget about the BBLs, and now they're gone. It's just really tiring to see people cosplay us and then shed away the black girl when you're good and ready, when the pendulum swings. Because just as quickly as y'all made black popular, now it got too mainstream, and now we have to go back to the old money. I see it. You're not slick. So to now have this reclamation of what was initially supposed to tear us down also be critiqued in this manner, it's just frustrating. So I think it's really important, especially to acknowledge where Black women stand in this country academically. We are the smartest people here. We've made that very clear. Um, so if that's not worth protecting, I don't know what is. But our minds are something that cannot be replaced and they cannot be studied. They don't understand the way we think, the way we present ourselves, our resilience. It's envied. So, in an attempt to humble us regarding our sexuality and promiscuity, we said, no mas. We're going to flip this, and it's going to be a direct reflection of our intellect. You're welcome. With grace. On the topic of thought daughters, I think it's a pretty healthy reclamation, and I don't see the issue. I can agree that it can be very exclusionary. You know, whenever I do see those kind of like thought daughter posts, it's always like the same white authors, the same books, like the 1940s that definitely have racist text within them, racist authors, but neither here nor there. So we can just shed a little bit of light to POC authors who have nothing but good reform, and I can give a few suggestions later on. Just to wrap up the whole thought daughter segment, I'd like to just preface it by saying I don't think anything that is encouraging um, a pursuit of education, literature, or I don't know, reading a damn book to be a bad thing. Like, even if it is just for the aesthetic, girl, you're reading. That's a step in the right direction to me. Um, and I also just want to say, I saw this TikTok. I forget the creator, and I don't think I saved it. But there was a TikTok about, or maybe it was a YouTube video. I don't know. But anyways, there was a creator who brought to the internet a very potent statement that I think really needed to be heard. Because I will say, with the whole thought daughter trend, what I have noticed is people acting like they're better than other people because they're reading Jojevsky or whatever the fuck how you pronounce his name. But you're not. I will say that there are some texts that are a little bit harder to read, but reading is a skill, okay? Reading is a skill. And if we're being real, in my humble opinion, those great writers that we're talking about, were they really good writers with dense material, or were they slightly illiterate and grammatically incorrect? Because there were some word salads, run on sentences that I'd like to address because I have a bone to pick. I remember my sociology class that I took last year. Oh my God, I'd be reading certain texts and I would just be sitting there hours, taking hours to decipher whatever those people were saying. But actually, it was a philosophy class. So you have an idea of where that looks like. But reading is a skill. It's muscle memory, but it's not muscle memory because it's something that you get better at over time. And if we're being real, I'm sure there was a long period of time where we all put the books down and we're on that phone longer than we should have been. But the point is that we're reading again. So that's lovely. And in the TikTok specifically, the creator, she was talking about the fact that reading in general is inherently creative. No matter what it is that you're reading, you're creating a world in your mind, you're world building, you're personifying characters, you're giving life to the text that's right in front of you. And nobody should take that away, regardless of what it is that you're reading. I don't care if it's Green Eggs and Ham. I don't care if it's A Silent Patient or who's somebody deep? Quickly, quickly, quickly. Maya Angelou. I don't care who it is. The point is that we're reading, we're tapping into that creative side of our brain, and we're just leaving ourselves with something, a state of true fulfillment. And that cannot be replaced with a 2D screen. So that's all I have to say on that, really. Now I'm just going to give a little handful of books by people of color. It's the majority Black people, but there's some Indigenous people in there as well. Nonfiction and fiction books that I highly recommend. In light of it being the last day of Black History Month, well, the last day of Black History Month was 2 days ago, but the time I'm filming this, it was the last day of Black History Month. And I don't know, I don't really see these books getting talked about enough, in my opinion. And I hope to grow my collection of black authors in both fiction and nonfiction. I'm trying to expand my palette, expand my horizon so I can have more to yap about. So let's just get right into it. First and foremost, The Mastery of Love. This is written by, it's Told Tech, written by Don Miguel Ruiz. This is one of my favorite books. It literally shattered everything I ever thought I knew about love and rebuilt it in my own perspective. Like, this book, it had me a little bit confused because I thought it was going to tell me what to think about love, but all it did was usher me into a place of understanding what I believe is love. So, yeah, highly recommend. On the topic of love, we can also all about love. Bell Hooks, amazing. She breaks down love at its core from a few different perspectives: familial, individual, relationship. She talks about masculinity, femininity, and ties it all up in a pretty little bow, which is beautiful cover. Like, come on, let's talk about, ignore how dingy my book is. But this was a pretty book. Like, come on. As you can see, I loved it. So definitely go read. Then we have Walking on Cowrie Shells. This is a collection of short stories written by Nana Nikwetti, if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm pretty sure she's Cameroonian. Yep, Cameroon. And it's a lot of, I really couldn't really tell you what this book is about because, like I said, it's a bunch of short stories. But I don't think there's one story in here that will not have you questioning things. It kind of trudges along the genres. It talks about a lot of different genres itself. There's horror, there's romance, there's a lot of mythology, there's a little bit of psychology, like, psychological thriller type ish. So go check it out. Next, we have Braiding Sweetgrass. It's written by Robin Wall Kimmerer. It's exactly what it says right here on the cover. Indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teaching of plants. What I love about this writer is that not only is she a writer, but she's also a scientist. So we can see the beautiful bridge between science, spirituality, and lifestyle and culture. And it's just a beautiful blend. And I love her writing style. Go read. It's amazing. It's a personal essays and just great knowledge that leaves you feeling heartwarmed while you're learning. Like, who doesn't want the type of learning experience? Next, we have Everything Everything. If you want a cute, if you want a cute romance book for a black girl, get you this one, okay? I watched the movie first, then I read the book, and the book is always better, and it is. Um, I loved this book. It was so sweet, so gentle. It's, on the YA side, but it's still a really cute read. And it's nice and fluffy and heartwarming. There's no struggle of, which for some reason a lot of black, you know what, let me not, it's Black History Month. Read it. Last but certainly not least, we have The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I read this when I was like 13, maybe too young. I don't know, maybe not. Who knows? But it won a Nobel Prize. I didn't know that. Look at that. Another reason to go read. I don't need her to say anything. Read the book. Just gonna conclude where we are in today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you guys do take a look at those recommendations. Black History doesn't end with Black History Month, okay? So it's important to shout out these Black authors as they've been amazing pioneers for Black people in different spaces and different realms and different careers and professions. I consider myself to be somewhat of a writer. So um, maybe I'll start to share that one day. Who knows? If it wasn't for these Black authors before me, I probably would never even consider something like that. So I deeply appreciate them and I look up to them and I have an affinity for them because I love books and I love to write. Anything that makes me feel something, or emotion can be translated from page to heart center, it's priceless to me. Um, but let me stop it yapping. I don't even have a tea quote for today, you guys, but that really would have tied it all in, things that we're talking about writing. It's okay though. Next time, for sure. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and be back next week, Sunday. You know what time it is, you know the vibes. Bye.